looking at number 1.
Okay, so real quick, let's go over these answers. People at home are kind of probably need to check to make sure that they completed the assignment at home last night and they're still at home today, so they need to check to see that they have the answers correct as well. So again, really quickly, only evens, number 2, 115. Okay, 1/15. Once you put it in simplest form, that's where you should have finished. Then number 4 was 17/60. Number 6, 23/40. Number 8, 3/10. Number 10, 10/63. And then number 12, 5/24. Okay, let's flip it to the other side. On the other side, you had to start with problem number 2. And number 2, you should have 11/21. Number 4, you should have 5/12. Number 6, you should have 7/40. Number 8, you should have 2/21. Number 10, 27/56. And then number 12, when you compare these guys, they were equal. They should have come out equal to each other. Now, the only other one that you had to complete was question number 14. And I want to kind of take a quick second just to kind of explain question 14. The answer itself should have been 1/6, 1/6. But I'm going to insert a page here for a quick second. The reason I want to set this up for you is to show you something. So this was set up as a word problem, right? And so as you were reading the word problem, the first fraction that showed up in the word problem was what fraction? 1/3. And then the other fraction that came a little bit later in the story was 1/2. And then the question said something like, figure out which one had more. So you knew you had to subtract, right? So if you set the problem up like this, you are going to have an issue. And let me show you what the issue is going to be. What's the least common denominator between 3 and 6? 3 and 2. 6. I just said the answer. Okay. All right. If we do all of the steps that we're supposed to do, what would my numerator become on this side, Joel? 2. What would my numerator become on this side? 3. Okay. All right. Hello. Yikes. Problem. Did any of you get to this little situation here where you were like, I've got 2 minus 3? And you can't ever do 2 minus 3, right? I mean, if we think about like in our second grade days of learning math, what did we learn always has to be on the top or listed first in a subtraction problem? The bigger number. So I can't have 2 minus 3. It wouldn't work, right? So what happened? How did I end up with the 2, which is a smaller number, in front of the 3? Addison.
Because 1/3 is smaller than 1/2.
Yes. So see, you all kind of got trapped. You read that word problem, and you just put the first fraction that you saw, you put it in the first position. And then the second fraction, you put in the second position. Well, when you set it up subtracting the smaller number by the bigger number. So this is where when we start thinking about fractions, just like with whole numbers, it's easy for all of us to look at 2 and look at 3 and know that 3 is bigger than 2. But when you're looking at fractions, it's a little harder. It's harder to tell if 1/3 is bigger or smaller than 1/2. Okay? So if you aren't sure which one's the bigger one, take a minute and compare them. How do we compare fractions? How? Cross multiply. This times this is 2. This times this is 3. Which one's the larger fraction? 1/2. So we never should have set this problem up this way. In order to solve this thing, we should have set this up as 1/2 minus 1/3. Then when we did all the work and we filled in our new numerators, we would have ended up with 3 minus 2. And that we can do. Okay? Now I'm betting a lot of you, even though you ended up with this, still got 1/6. But remember, you can't have a small number minus a big number, because really, if you do, where do you end up? Yes, you end up in negatives. So I know it looks easy, but I want you to stop, don't break that habit, okay? You have to always, when you subtract, if it's a word problem, you have to put the bigger number on the top. You have to list it first. So the word problem is not necessarily going to put it in order for you. You have to figure out which one's bigger. And if you don't know by just looking, then cross multiply to try to figure it out. Got it? Okay. So how'd that feel, that lesson? Easy? Good? All right. Let's go ahead and not put this away, but close it and set it to the side for a few minutes. But you do need your notebook, because I want to talk to you about what's next. Okay? So what's next is how to subtract using estimation. Now, this is something that honestly, when we did this in chapter 6 with the adding, this was like a super simple thing for you guys. So I'm expecting it to be super simple again. I'm going to turn these fans on because it's a little close in here. And maybe, Rory, will you open up a couple of windows back there, maybe? Yes, ma'am.
I was reading in our classroom and I went 8.5.
You went 8.5 what?
I went 8.5. Because I'm so used to fractions.
That's funny. You already said, he said, I just looked to see what time our class would ended, and I said it ends at 8:45. So, because he was thinking fractions.
8.5.
That is funny.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Lori. All right, so today is actually lesson 7.3. I even have that listed. I don't think it is. No, sorry, my bad. Okay, so this is actually lesson 7.3. I'll just kind of squeeze this up here in the corner. And in this lesson, come on, Mason, I need a little more motivation, okay? And in this lesson, we're going to learn how to take two fractions, not mixed numbers, people, not yet, just fractions. We're going to take these two fractions, and we're going to learn how to estimate them using subtraction, okay? So if we think back to how we did this with addition, the first thing that we have to do is estimate, is the fraction closer to a 0, a half, or 1, okay? And this is like, if any of you goofed up on this during the addition chapter, which not many of you did, but if any of you did, the way you goofed is that you tried to estimate at the end. You're making it harder on yourself doing it that way. It's so much easier to start by estimating the fractions that you see, okay? And how do we estimate them? Well, we look at them and we kind of decide, is that fraction, in your opinion, closer to a 0, a half, or 1? That's what we're trying to discover, okay? So, since it's estimation, you know that I've told you before, there's not a definite right answer on this, but we should all be pretty close to what each other has, all right? So let's check out this first example. So I have 9/10 minus 1/9. So if the star tells me that I should estimate first, then that means I'm going to look at the first fraction that I see, which is 9/10, and I'm going to ask myself, is that fraction closer to a 0, a half, or 1? Who wants to take on this problem? Olivia, what would you estimate that one to be?
9/10.
It is, yeah. Would we all agree that 9/10 is closest to 1? Yeah, because if the 9 was a 10, if this 9 on the top was a 10, 10/10 would be 1, right? So actually, yeah, obviously 9/10 is closer to a 1 than anything else. All right, let's bring down our subtraction sign because we're going to need that. And then let's estimate the next one. 1/9. James.
0.
Yeah. Would we all agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. 1/9 is definitely closer to 0 than anything else. So when we did this with addition, we made it to this point and then we just added, right? But now that we're in subtraction, what do you think we do?
You just
We
subtract.
just subtract.
And that turns into your simple
So our estimation is that this answer would estimate to be about 1. Okay? This is the fast way to estimate fractions or to subtract fractions. I'm not looking for the exact answer. I'm not looking for you to tell me what 9/10 minus 1/9 really is. I want you to tell me if that answer is going to be closer to a 0, a half, or 1. And you do that quickly by estimating fractions first. Yes? All right, let's try one. Y'all try another one. Here we go, okay? What about this example? All right. I don't want to hit that little thing. I'm going to just hide it. Every time I hide it, I have a hard time finding it again, but that's okay. Okay. So, here's your second example. 3/4 minus 4/10. So estimate first.
super easy. After kindergarten. That's all kindergarten.
All right, so who wants to take this one on? All right, Addison, tell me, 3/4, what did you estimate that to be?
1 whole.
Me too, okay. 4/10?
I estimated that to be a half.
Yeah, me too. I would also. Did anybody choose to estimate that something different? I think a half is the best estimation. Because if you change the 4 at the top to a 5, wouldn't 5/10 be an exact half? If I simplified 5/10, that would simplify to 1/2, right? So 1/2 is the best estimation. So now we have to figure out, okay, what is 1 minus 1/2? Well, let's think about this in the thing that we all love to eat, pizza. If I have 1 whole pizza and I eat half of it, what do I have left? Everybody? I have 1/2 left. So that's our estimation. Yay?
Yay.
Okay. Now, I want you to look at one other thing because the book always loves to do bizarre things. So, sometimes, okay, this is not any different, so don't look at it like all of a sudden I just put something in Spanish up on the wall, okay? This is not anything different, so don't start looking confused on me. But sometimes you have to explain if the answer is a reasonable estimation. And what I mean by that, what reasonable, and I quoted the word reasonable because that's the word they use in the chapter. But the word reasonable means like good. Is this a good estimation? So sometimes you're going to have to do what we just did a second ago. You have to actually estimate it on your own. But then sometimes they're going to give you the entire problem. They're going to give you a fraction minus a fraction and says it's equal to another fraction. So you have to figure out, is the answer they got a good answer? And so this is how we break this down, okay? So we kind of have to baby step our way through this. So let's check out the first one. The first fraction is 7/8. So we have to ask ourselves, 7/8 is closer to what? If I was estimating, is it closer to a 0, a half, or 1? Brody?
1.
It's closer to a 1. So I'm going to put my thoughts on paper, so I'm going to stick that 1 right there. The 7/8 is about 1, right? Let's move to the next one, 2/5. 2/5 is about what? What would you estimate that to be? I would estimate that to be a half also. Would anybody choose to estimate that to a different thing? A half is the best estimation. Some people might want to say 0 on that one. But if I change the 5 at the bottom to a 4, 2 over 4 is an exact half. If I simplified it, it'd be a half. So this simplifies closest to a half, okay? This is what we just did a second ago, right?
Yeah.
But now we have to look at what they say the answer is. 1940s is closer to what? What's 1940s closer to? Yeah. Yeah, it is. Because if 19 was a 20, would 20 over 40 equal a half?
Yeah.
Yes. So 19 over 40 is absolutely closest to a half. So the question at the bottom says, is this a reasonable statement? Does it make sense to say this fraction minus this fraction equals that fraction?
Correct.
Well, let's look at what you just said. Is 1 minus a half equal a half? So then, is this a reasonable estimation? You would say yes.
Okay.
It is. So everybody open your workbook for a quick sec. That's why I said don't put it away, just close it, because you're gonna get it right back out. Okay? So grab your workbook and everybody open it today, 109, I think. All right, so let's do one together so that we can kind of practice one of these before you are left with having to do some tonight for homework, which should be super, super simple, yes?
Yes.
All right, so let's check out problem number 1. So they kind of broke it down for you. 1/7 as a fraction, what is that closest to? 0. So let's put a 0 on that line because 1/7 is closest to a 0. I have most of you 100% locked in paying attention. And I have some of you just staring at me. Staring at me is not going to get the job done. You've got to be involved in what we're doing. All right, let's move down to the next little section. It says 1 over 14 is closer to, Colin?
0.
0. I would agree, wouldn't you? Okay. Let's move down to what they say the answer is. 10 over 21. Xander, what's 10 over 21 going to be closest to? About a half, isn't it? Because 10 over 20 would be a half, so 10 over 21 is about a half. All right, so now let's ask ourselves, does this make sense?
No.
No. Because if you have a fraction that you estimate to be a 0, 0 minus 0 is not going to equal a half, is it? No. So your answer is no. All right, people. Does this seem like brain busting stuff?
No.
So what are you gonna have to do? Well, let's do the odds.
Okay.
So we already did the first one together. So you have to do number 1 and number 3 on the front. So number 3, you have to kind of just read what it says and then answer the question. Flip to the back for a quick second. On the back, you're also gonna complete the odds. And you have to, but on the back, they don't write it out for you, so you're gonna have to kind of, write it out to see if it's reasonable or not, right? And then for number 5, you have to then figure out which ones are greater than a half. And the only word problem you have to complete is number 7, because the other 2 are even numbers. Any questions on this? So page 109 and 110, odds only. Okay, and let's work on some estimation. You have time, there's not a teacher here yet, so if you want to go ahead and kind of work on this until somebody knocks on the door to say when class is starting, go for it, okay? Questions before I stop the video? Yes?
I have a question on number 3.
Okay.
I just don't know what her answer.
Okay, so let's check out what number 3 says. It says 2 fractions are each greater than 0 and less than a half. The lesser fraction is subtracted from the greater fraction, which describes this difference. So you have to kind of look at the choices below and decide which one of those choices below match what's going on in the story up above. So if you have 2 fractions, okay, so one of the fractions is greater than 0, And then the other one is less than 0. The smaller fraction is subtracted by the greater fraction. So this one, let's see, this one would be greater than, this one would be greater than 0. No, I don't think that would be greater than 0. This one will be greater than 0. And then the other one is less than a half. So that would be this one. You see what I'm just following the story to see which one's next. And that's the only one that then fits the story. Okay. All right, 109 and 110 odds only.